I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of dark femme concept that's going around the internet and that's very much prevalent.
Okay.
There's one that's called the golden retriever and black cat theory.
Okay.
And that says if the woman is avoidant and you have an anxiously attached masculine, then the relationship will thrive.
So in essence, the male has to be like the golden retriever that's always
Listening,
like
he's
always
ready on
wants
the go.
ready to play, ready to be there for you, do whatever you want, and like super loyal. And the woman is the cat. And what characteristics would the cat be
Well,
giving
the
out?
cat has to like in a very short way to make sense to someone like me is she has to play hard to get. She has to
Ah.
not give in.
Right.
She has to let the chase going on, you know?
So she should not be like as needy as the dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you need to play like hard to get. You know, like how black cats or cats in general are not
Right.
very affectionate.
Right.
So basically, in short, if I have to put up the question in a Yats terms, give me a second, guys. I've typed everything out because I'm so bad at the terminology.
And when she needs it most, she's forgotten my password on my phone.
But based on the dark femme logic and all of these theories, you have to be avoidant to get someone to love or chase you. What are your thoughts on that?
For a woman, as a woman.
Yeah,
to
for
do
a
it?
woman.
Well, that's an interesting theory. This like black cat or like whatever black cat and golden retriever thing. This is why I need my wife because she identifies all the trends on social media that I need to address, especially when it comes to relationships or dating. But I think that here's what's so crazy is there is some wounded truth to it, and I'm gonna break this down. I'm in no way approving of this theory or enforcing it. In fact, I don't necessarily like it because it brandishes it to be only a certain way. But it talks of two strong themes. One, it's trying to tell women to become more avoidant, and it's trying to say that your perfect relationship equation is when you as a woman can become more avoidant and when you find a man who can be a little more anxious and chase you all the time. Again, think about that question about the trust right at the beginning. When do I want water most? When I'm the most thirsty, right? This theory is coming out as a reflection again of why should women be more avoidant, because there's been a standard brandishing that women tend to be more anxious, right? So it's trying to say, hey, you become more like a black cat, become more anxious, more avoidant, and then the guy will start chasing you. On the contrary, it's saying, if you're like that, or not contrary, in the same way it's saying, if you're like that, what's the kind of man you'll attract? Someone who wants to chase you, which is like a golden retriever. Now, the basis of it is typically in my studies, I think I did an evaluation once on all the clients and the people I've worked with, and around like 90% of women typically identify as being more anxious. I think this is an evolutionary thing because they are the ones who are also, pardon?
The pendulum.
But they identify as more anxious because typically they evolutionary are the ones who are more concerned about the family and the ones who are more concerned about the relationship, right? So their focus, an anxious person's focus is their relationship. An avoidant person's focus is actually typically their profession, their hobbies, etc. Men are designed in masculinity, like in a healthy manner evolutionarily, to focus on the purpose, on work. Because if I love you and you love me, we'll both be hugging the fucking heater for heat and no one would have paid the bills and no one would have eaten and nothing would have happened and that's all that would have happened there, right? So I need to be driven so that I can bring to our collective, the home, the community, whatever, what can support the community in that manner. So that's meat, that's, basically things that money represents, the sources, the supply. And you take those things and create them into nourishment for the family. So that's the basis of why women typically identify as the ones who are more emotional, the ones who care more about it, and the men are more driven, because if a man's just having a bad emotional day perpetually, it's going to be hard for him to work and create purpose, and then there's no money coming home and everybody's going to be abandoned. Now, the problem as society's gone on is instead of, again, empowering women to become healthier and more secure, like you just said, let's try and swing the pendulum all the way across because maybe we'll come down back to the middle. So, hey, ladies, or as they say, hey, bitches, instead of you all, and you guys can't really see me right now, but I'm doing like a, hey, bitches, instead of you all being all anxious and shit, why don't you all try being avoidant? Why don't you try being the one that runs away? Let them chase you. Now, typically, what this would do is this would maybe, if a woman tries it for a bit, it would be very hard. But I think what it will also do is it would actually attract someone who tends to chase them at the start. And initially, that could feel very validating. But later on, as a woman starts to settle into her true nurturing, like emotional nature, she'll recognize that that's ugly. She doesn't like it. She'll be bored. She'll find it disgusting. She'll find the guy too needy, which is what typically happens. This is what we call the flippening in psychology, where if an anxious person, to basically avoid a secure relationship or someone chasing them because they're used to doing the chasing all the time, right? So an anxious person to avoid, someone trying to chase them will find someone who's trying to prove their love to them as needy or as being too much. And so in their mind, they'll switch to becoming an avoidant just so that they can avoid this person who's trying to show up for them and love them. And by doing that, they avoid a healthy relationship. And doing that, they go all the way back to being anxious. This is what I see. I can promise you this black cat golden retriever thing in a few months or years will switch the other way for people to say again, why are all these men so needy? It's so unattractive.
But I think like for example in our relationship as well, right? There's one thing that you're the black cat, but there's another thing, and I think women confuse this quite often, is that trusting.
Right.
So instead of chasing someone or chasing something, but trusting if it's for you to
Right.
come back.
Yeah.
And I think this whole theory is truly based on that.
Of course.
But it's all like in the confusion of trying to be like liberal and like open and like free and like, trying to change it around completely.
Right.
That's how they've done it. But that's what I believe.
Think about this way, babe. If you were really thirsty, let's come back to the same thirsty analogy, right? If you were really thirsty in a desert and I came to give you any sort of water, murky water, the water wasn't even that great, whatever, you'd pounce on it, right? You'd take it. Is it because the water is that good that you want it so bad, or is it because you're so desperately thirsty?
Because I'm so desperate.
Exactly. So you're willing to try any solution as long as you get that water, right? Think of this whole pendulum swing here as being that. But if you had 35 bottles of water in your backpack, maybe you were still in the desert, maybe you were in a city, maybe you were in like the Amazon where there's plenty of water, it doesn't matter. You have a lot of healthy water with you. At that point, if I came with like murky kind of water, would you want it?
No.
Why?
Because I have my water, I'm happy.
Exactly. So you trust that you have enough water and the water that you need, so you don't desperately have to fall for this, like the water that's coming, right? So you don't need to swing the pendulum. Now, a lot of women, unfortunately, don't have that. They've gone through shitty relationships, they've gone through bad pasts. And so for them, they're willing to do anything to get a man. They don't trust that they will have a healthy relationship. So in their minds, because they're so thirsty, they haven't had a good relationship, they will settle for murky kind of water. And in my opinion, a man who is also chasing, he has unconsciously lost his own sense of boundaries. Boundaries are a very masculine concept. He's lost his own stability, he's lost his own grounding. A man can be in love with a woman and he can show up 100%. He can be loyal, he can show up, he can be dedicated, all of those. But if he's desperate, then he's also wounded, right? He's also wounded because that motherfucker's also thirsty right now.
Because, and like, as an individual, right? If you see someone who's so obsessed or so you're automatically repulsed by it, right?
You think you want it so much because you've had the opposite. You've had people who are not interested, people have cheated on you, abandoned you, anything. So you think that you need to have someone who's obsessed with you. But when you get that person who's obsessed with you, you'll chase them away. Because at the end of the day, the concept, the psychology, and the dynamics of love are such that if you don't know what healthy love feels like, and you don't truly in your subconscious mind believe you deserve healthy love, you will only attract unhealthy love. So if you try and swing the pendulum this way or that way or whatever to try and get there, you won't. You'll avoid it. So what is the solution? So before I get to the solution, I want to say the only part of this I endorse is one simple thing. That let's say the black cat identifies as the avoidant, the golden retriever as the anxious. What are the characteristics of the anxious person? Desperate, needy, clingy, want you more, I'll do anything, I'll put in all the work, I'll abandon myself for you.
Right.
Now, what are the characteristics of the avoidant? That they're more withdrawn, they value a lot of their personal space way too much, right? They don't really want to be connected. That they don't actually express their emotions all the time, they keep them in. The anxious is the avoidant, that they're always expressing it just for someone to hear. Now, the only part I endorse is that the anxious person can move in the direction a little more of an avoidant, because that will bring them probably a little closer to a secure place.
Right.
But not to swing all the way across, just a little more. So if an anxious person starts to take more space for themselves, they'll know their own value. If the anxious person starts to hold back on their emotions and listen to the value of their own emotions rather than vomiting into somebody else, they'll know how they really feel. If an anxious person starts to put their efforts into their own job, their own hobbies, their own life a little more, they'll value themselves a little more rather than always run to the other person to share things with.
Right.
And therefore, they'll become more secure. Stop yawning while I'm
I'm
talking
not
to you.
yawning.
Jesus. Oh my God. We're supposed to be on this podcast. You're supposed to be interested here, okay? I pay you to be interested, woman, not to sit there and yawn while I'm asking questions.
Sorry, the doggy's just so comfy next to me. I'm
I
just
know,
like,
and the
"Huh."
doggy's like yawning, so it's very contagious. And so, on the opposite, for an avoidant, they pull away from emotions all the time. They take too much space, all of that. They can learn to share a little more of their emotions. That'll make them more healthy. They can learn to be a part of a connection or a community, or have more physical proximity, or be more close in emotional or physical proximity. That would make them more healthy. They can learn to take all of their obsession out of their hobbies, their profession, and put a little more time and effort into the relationship, like the anxious would.
Right.
That would make them a little more healthy. So that's the only part that I
It's like
endorse.
meeting midway for both of
Exactly,
them.
exactly. That's the only part that I would endorse, is coming a little closer to the middle. But that is what healthy love looks like. That's what security looks like. So instead of focusing on being like in terms of analogies, instead of focusing on being a golden retriever, why don't you be a little more like my black lab Klaus, right?
Black lab.
Who he would never run to people. He would come to say hi and loved everybody, and then after that, he would be happy
But
in his own
Klaus was
space.
quite avoidant
No, he
and
wasn't,
he was
Aisha.
quite
You just
avoidant.
want affection all the time. And Klaus was like,
quite
yeah, no
avoidant.
thanks. I've drawn my boundary. I'm good.
No, I think
He
he
was
was
a healthy
quite-
expression. He would love you when you came home. He'd play with you, and then he'd be like, okay, I'm happy in my own space
would
right
love
now.
you when
no,
you
no, no.
came
He'd love
home.
everybody. He'd love everybody.
Yax
But
is
I
like-
think he sensed you wanting to like cuddle him and play with him and squeeze him all the time, and he was like, yeah, no thanks. I'm
That's a
I'm
bit
out of here.
avoidant for me, guys.
That's a bit avoided by Aisha.
That's a bit avoidant.
But that's the only thing that I would recommend, is that prioritize the healthy basis. And that's what would create better relationships. Do your own healing. Don't try and be like somebody else or mimic it or swing the pendulum the other way, because that comes with its own problems. You're just creating more and more problems, because at the end of the day, you're avoiding the center place of healthy love and you're dancing all around them. Do you need to sneeze?
No,
Sneeze
I
if you
feel
need
like
to.
healthy love starts within you as well, right? And if you feel confident enough to hold
Yeah.
that space, then like anyone that comes in doesn't have to be a golden retriever.
Yeah.
Black cat will be your person.
Klaus, exactly. My
no,
doggy.
Klaus is quite avoidant.
No, he's not. But
Guys, he's quite. He
but
doesn't
yeah.
like cuddles. He only welcomes
he loves
yats.
cuddles. What are you talking
Only
about?
from yats.
What are you talking? He loves cuddles.
Only from yats.
Babe, you're literally on top of him all the time, which is why he probably
No.
doesn't like the cuddles. So
Whatever, guys.
the long and short of that is that healthy love is more valuable. Healthy love is way more valuable. Healthy love internally, and that internal security is way more valuable than just wanting to swing a pendulum to obtain a result, because you won't get that result.